Sir Graham Henry. Ted, welcome to my podcast.
Pleasure. Good to be here.
First of all, I apologise for the barrage of messages to try and get you to do it. We've been going back and forth for a very long time.
Oh, 6 months perhaps. No, I was always going to do it. It was just a matter of fitting it, Dom.
Yeah, you're 77 now, 78?
Is that important? I'm 78 actually.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's
I'm probably older than you, Dom.
marginally. Well, there's some mornings I probably feel older than you. I find it inspiring because you're still so busy. Like I messaged you earlier in the year and you said I can't do it just yet because me and my wife are going on a trip to the Antarctica. A couple of weeks ago I messaged again. You're in Canada. You're all over the place.
Yeah, we've had a busy year. We're not that busy most years, but just how it happens that 24 seems a busy year. So I've been to Europe, Canada, Antarctica, going to South Africa for the All Blacks 2 tests, doing a safari in between. A couple of trips to Fiji, one with a family, one to Harley Williams' wedding.
Oh, you are going to that. I had his fiancée, Anna Mowbray, in the podcast the other day, and I asked her about the wedding guest list. I said, who's going that I'd know? Dan, Richie? And she said, none of my business.
Oh.
Now
I do apologise. I won't say any more.
Oh, that's going to be good.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Hey, I so appreciate you being here. I've done so much research. It's hard to cram like an amazing 78 years of life into a podcast, but yeah, we'll do our best to cover some of the I suppose greatest hits and greatest shits of your life.
Look forward to it.
So, first of all, I found this on the back of your book. It's your coaching stat sheet. How good are you at recalling what you've done and your records and percentages and stuff?
I can't remember those, but
Well,
I look back with a lot of gratitude.
Yeah.
I loved it. Very fortunate to go through that experience.
Well, let's try a couple of these just for a laugh. All Blacks. What was your success record?
I know that one. I think it was about 87.5.
Oh, 85. Calm down.
85.7, was it?
In your book, it just says 85.
Okay.
British Lions?
We lost to Australia 2-1. The Test series in 201. In fact, it changed my life, but that was another story.
Yeah, well, your success record there was 70%, which on paper doesn't look too bad, but it scarred you deeply, didn't it?
Oh, I just had too much on, Dom, and
Yeah.
I hit the wall, actually, and that's why I resigned from Welsh Rugby and came back to New Zealand. So I got depression, self-assessment, of course. I didn't go to a doctor or anything, but I just lost all desire or energy to do the job. And I was contracted to Wales for 5 years, and I've been through 3.5 years of that contract. So I was meant to go on to the 2003 Rugby World Cup in Australia, but I just couldn't do the job. I'd hit the wall, got overloaded, didn't think I would, thought I was bulletproof, and I wasn't. So that was a great learning experience.
Yeah, I'd love to get into some greater detail later on, if you'd be prepared to. I've heard you talk about this before, and it's so good to hear guys in particular of a certain age talking about that stuff openly. I've had John Hart. Do you know Harvey very well?
I know Harvey pretty well.
Yeah, I've had him on the podcast, and there's a lot of parallels between what you went through and what he went through after 1999 in the World Cup. So we'll get into that a bit later. First of all, let's go right back to the young Graham Henry. So, good cricketer, good rugby player, bit of a smartass.
Yeah, that's a good summary.
Is it? You got caned on your last day of school.
Hell, we're going to go right back there.
Just briefly.
I thought that was a token, really. Ridiculous, really, looking back.
It was a master that had it in for you, right? That was looking for
I
a
was
reason.
a music master.
Yeah.
I'd been playing cricket for Christchurch Boys versus Auckland Grammar School, so I hadn't handed my textbooks back to the textbook shop. So I was doing that, and I was meant to be an assembly, apparently. So that's why I got caned. Ridiculous, isn't it? We're talking about 1964. And I refused the cane from the deputy headmaster. So I was sent to the headmaster. of Christchurch boys, and he gave me a couple of tokens on the bum. But the staff got very upset about that.
At the injustice.
At the injustice. But, you know, it was just one of those things that happened. I thought it was an injustice, but it wasn't a biggie.
Well, you got into the education system yourself, so I'm sure you got payback on a lot of... There's probably a lot of like middle-aged men in the country that have got the honour of being caned by Graham Henry. Would it be fair to say?
I think it hurt me more than it hurt them, Dom.
That's what my dad used to say before he gave me the belt.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, no, it doesn't. Trust me, it's hurting me the most.
Well, it was a quick, sharp punishment, and you got on. So it had its value at the time, but I can understand why it's been abolished. There's been a lot more communication between the school and the parents now, which I guess is a positive.
Yeah. So tell us about young Raewyn Cochrane. Raewyn Cochrane. She didn't like you in the beginning, right? And you wore her down?
Yeah, she thought I was a bit of a prick, really.
What a prick.
Is that allowed to be on the podcast, Tom?
Anything goes.
So we were in the same class at physical education school in Dunedin. Both Christchurch people, didn't know each other. Got together in the third year of 3. So the first 2 years she avoided me. As I said, I think she thought I was a bit of a twit. But once she got to know me, thank goodness she bent. And we got married very young, ridiculous, 23 and 21.
1973.
We're still together. No, 1970, Dom.
Really?
Yeah, you got that wrong, but that's okay.
I'm going to edit that out.
You can't be right all the time. And so we've been married for 54 years. Best selection I've ever made.
Never dropped her once?
We're still married. She's still my current wife.
Yeah. And I bumped into you guys in Waiheke Island maybe a couple of months ago. You two, you both look great for your... Actually, I was going to say for your age, but for any age, you both walk briskly through the car park. And you look really happy. Like, you know, I think you were holding hands at the time.
Is that right? Goodness me.
Yeah.
It must have been an unusual situation. But no, as I say, Dom, most important selection of my life. She's been fantastic. She knows rugby. That's not why I married her. But she came from a rugby family. 2 brothers and father all played representative rugby. 2 brothers, one played for New Zealand 20s. One was an All Black trialist. So she knew the game. Which was a hell of an advantage. Also a very good sportswoman in her own right. Coached the Welsh netball team.
Yeah.
Coached Auckland. New Zealand Silver Fern selector. So, you know, that understanding of sport at a high level and what was required was a real benefit and a real help.
Yeah, didn't she initially, this might be just an urban legend, but didn't she sort of initially select Conrad Smith?
Oh, that's a good story. Yes, well, I came home one night after being, I think, in Dunedin, and Conrad was playing for the Hurricanes, probably in Wellington against somebody else. So I hadn't seen the game. And I said, how would the game go, Hurricanes playing whoever? She said, gee, that Conrad Smith's not a bad player. Well, not you too, Raewyn. So BJ Lahore, God bless him, miss him dearly, had been talking about Conrad, and we'd all been talking about Conrad. She said, he's a very intelligent player. Oh, okay. So in the finish, we picked Conrad. But I always tell the story that Conrad got he got overconfident because he knew my marriage was over. I ever dropped him. So that was just a story, but he was a fabulous All Black.
Yeah, he was.
But you know, she knew rugby and could see good players on the field and understood the game.
You must have tested her at times over the years. Like very early on, you're in Christchurch. You just bought a house, which was no mean feat at the time, and then straight away, you up sticks and moved to Auckland. Did you sort of discuss that with her, or you're looking at me confused? This was in your book. Or do you just go home one day and say, "Hey, I've got this job. We're going to Auckland"?
Yeah, well, you've done your homework, Dom. And I'm not confused. but I'm just surprised at the question. Yeah, I probably didn't handle it very well, you know. It was early time in the marriage, and Raewyn had never lived in her own house. Parents didn't own their own house. And so it was a really big deal for her, a big deal for both of us. And I got a ring from John Graham, who was the principal of Auckland Grammar School, and he taught me as a kid at Christchurch Boys, and he also coached me at High School Old Boys Rugby Club in Christchurch.
And All Black in his own right too, right?
Oh yeah,
Very
no, All
successful.
Black captain. Yeah. He was a very special person to me, very fine teacher, great mentor. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it hadn't been for him. So he rang me. He's just started as principal of Auckland Grammar School. 1973 it was. Said, there's a job here, Ted, do you want it? I could have bitten his arm off because I was wayward at the time. I hadn't really set any roots down and was making any progress. So yes, I'll be there. Then I thought, oh hell, new house, new wife, better discuss it. So before I'd made the decision before I discussed it with the most important person. So it wasn't easy, because leaving Christchurch, where we were born and bred, both of us, where our parents were, and to come up here. But best decision I ever made.
So you learnt your lesson. So decades down the track, when it's time to leave New Zealand and go to Wales, you do run it past Raewyn first?
You're a difficult man with asking difficult questions. I'm sure I did.
We have to get Raewyn in for a chat to get her side.
Yeah, well, it'll probably be different from what I'm saying. But I got this invitation to go to Wales, so she knew about the invitation. And when I decided to go, I'm sure we had discussed it, but I think the term was 5 years away from New Zealand. Was quite a hurdle, but she's always been very supportive. So I've been extremely lucky.
Yeah, we'll get into the Wales chapter later on as well. Like there's just so much of your story to get through. Like it's been such a rich mosaic of a life. Why? Oh, you look worried now. Like how long is this going to take?
Yeah. Is that a question or a statement?
No. Okay, so but you did well out of the house in Christchurch, right? Like you bought it for something like $10,000 and doubled your money.
Yeah, I think we bought it in pounds days, was it?
Right. Yeah, it would have been pounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like over what sort of span of time did you double your money? Like over a course of a year or a couple of years?
18 months, I think.
Wow.
It's a long time ago, Dom.
Yeah.
Before you were born.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was born in 73, so around that time.
About that time, yeah. So it's a wee while away, but I think we doubled our money in 2 years, yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, so we went from 10 to 20.
Yeah. Well, that would ease the pain for Raewyn of moving to Auckland.
Money's not that important, house-wise. And, it's a big step.
Yeah.
Christchurch people going to Auckland, not the right thing.
Right, really? Was it
Well, I think that's probably a part of it.
Yeah.
We've loved it.
Oh, that's been very good to you too, eh? So you come to Auckland. This is when you get into the teaching system. This is sort of when your coaching career starts. So you're hostel master, and you're dealing with the likes of, say, like Grant. When did you first meet Grant Fox? How old was he? Like 13?
Yeah, he was a hostel boy.
Yeah.
Came from Patararoo originally, and then from his parents bought a motel in Tauranga. Got to know his parents well, but he was, I would say, was 1975, 76. Doesn't matter. And he was a hostel boy. And somebody said to me, you want to go and see this little blonde kid kicking goals down the bottom field at Auckland Grammar School? Come into my office. So I wandered down to the bottom field, and he was Foxy kicking goals from the sideline as a 13-year-old. Well, that looks pretty good. Yeah.
Who else? Martin Crowe. He was a good rugby player, right?
Oh, I coached the Auckland Grammar School side with a guy named Derek Stubbs for 3 years. And then I coached by myself. And there were 7 All Blacks during that time. I coached the first 11 for a while. And Martin Crowe and Mark Greatbatch were in that team. Jeff Crowe.
Wow.
All Blacks John Drake, Nicky Allen, obviously Foxy, the Wetton brothers, Gary and Alan. 2 hookers, John Buchan and John Mills. I think that's 7. So like I learned to coach there. Like I've got so much great memories of those young guys. They were just jumping out of their skin, wanting to play, loved the game. Coached in the afternoon after school, ideal environment, ideal group of guys to coach. Still see them a lot. We have social occasions, we get together. It was the ideal environment to learn to coach.
Yeah, by the way, on that scorecard of your career for Auckland Grammar, you were the coach of 102 games. Do you know what your success record was, or how many wins, losses?
Oh, it was fairly high, I think.
Yeah, 93% success.
You know, good coaches, Dom, have good teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You dropped a lot of good names there.
Yeah, no, we had good teams.
Yeah.
And as I say, they were just a great bunch of young men. A lot of them have made a massive difference to life in New Zealand, quite frankly. Been very successful people. Not necessarily in sport, but in business and in community.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And then you sort of rise through the coaching ranks. I suppose this is when are you familiar with a guy called Malcolm Gladwell and the 10,000 hour theory?
I hear about the 10,000 hour theory.
Yeah, so this would have been, I suppose, where you cut your teeth or got your 10,000 hours, right, through the school system and through those sort of junior grades.
Yeah, look, I was a bit of a goal setter, and now when you win a couple of championships at secondary school level, you think you can coach the world. So pretty arrogant, as you say. So I was a goal setter, and I used to write my goals down, and one of them, well, there was good marriage and school headmaster and coached the All Blacks. It only took me 30 years to get there. So, but, you know, as I say, what a foundation to be able to learn to coach in that environment.
What else was on that list? Were they the 3 goals, or?
Oh, you know, successful kids who enjoy life. I can't remember the rest, Dom.
You've nailed them all?
Yeah, I think so. Life's been fantastic. You know, school headmaster. I think we've got a great marriage, but you'd have to ask Raewyn that.
Well, she's stuck around.
She has, but
It's always a promising sign.
she's a very resilient woman. You know, and coaching the All Blacks. So, you know, it was 30 years later when I was 58 when I started coaching the All Blacks. So it took a wee while of time, but I wasn't a professional rugby player or an All Black. So in those days, you went through the grades, and it's a pity that doesn't happen more often. Although, Razor's done the same. You know, he started off coaching club footy and going through, so that's good.
Yeah, this is your age thing is part of what attracts me to the Graham Henry story. Because I'm 51 now. I've got a lot of mates in their early mid 50s, and a lot of them are just sort of, it feels like they've reached the apex of their life, and they're just sort of like cruising along now, or even sort of going downhill. The fact that like all your greatest coaching achievements happened after the age of 50, it's I think it's inspirational. I think it's cool.
Well, the game went professional in '96, and I was 50 in '96. So, you know, it just what can you say are the best years of your life? But I was 58 to 66 when I coached the All Blacks, and I look back and say, how lucky you were, you know. Fantastic. So I got huge gratitude for that opportunity.
I suppose it seems quite odd to be coaching a big team like the All Blacks, but still far too young to be president of America.
What a shamble that is.
Shit show. Oh, so you were in Auckland in the 90s. You were sort of like, I suppose the thing you could compare it to is like Razor in Canterbury, right? Like you were winning everything. How many NPC titles did you won? Like 3 in a row, 4 in a row?
Yeah, but as I said before, you know, we had a marvellous foundation. So Harvey coached them, and then Morris and BG, Morris Trapp and BG Williams, and then I followed them. And there was a magnificent period of Auckland rugby. In fact, I was the coach when they lost the Shield.
You won it back though, right?
Yeah, but, you know, I think
we still lost it.
I think it was 64 challenges, and it was ridiculous length of time, 8 years or something. So I think Harvey won it against Canterbury. Harvey definitely won it as coach. His team won it. Then BG and Morris kept it. Then Ted got the team and lost it. And there was a very big social function of the Ranfurly Shield era. And the guest speakers were John Hart and Morris Trapp. Graham Henry stood in the corner because he had lost the bloody thing. But, so we had very good rugby teams. And so, you know, a lot of credit must go to those fantastic players. We just happened to be the coaches. And
you're deflecting a lot of the credit here.
no,
but it was Auckland rugby at that time was a dynasty. It was
like
massive.
I loved it. Loved the involvement. We won 4 national championships in a row. I think from 93 to whatever, 93, 94, 95, 96. And the team won the first 2 super... The Auckland coach was also the Blues coach. And Mac McCallion was the other coach in the Blues, who was outstanding. And we won the first 2 Blues, the first 2 super championships in 96 and 97, got beaten in 98 by the Crusaders at Eden Park in the final. Still annoys me, Dom. And then I went to Wales.
So those years in the Blues, who was Jonah in those teams?
Yeah, we had a poor side, really. Like, we had Jonah and Joey Venderi and Adrian Cashmore and Ronnie Clark and Lee Stensonis and Carlos Spencer, Junior Tanu'u, Michael Jones, Zinzan Brook, Mark Carter, Robin Brook, you know.
Geez, your memory's good, isn't it?
Paulo Brown, Craig Dowd, Sean Fitzpatrick. Like, it was an average team.
Yeah. It wasn't a team of champions, eh? It was. What are your memories of like Jonah Mania, or the first time you sort of came across this kid?
Oh, he was very quiet. I mean, you couldn't get boo out of him, and he struggled with the fitness side of the game, and we know why now. But hell, he changed the game. Like, the television people couldn't wait to get professional rugby on the screens, and he was the catalyst of that. He changed the game. Like a 120 kilo winger who could run the 100 metres in 11 seconds and do what he did on the rugby field. Like, it was all on the coaching, of course, Dom.
Yeah, 100%. He would have been nothing without you.
And then, you know, I remember him scoring a try in a semi-final, probably in 97. We got the ball from the end of the line out, half back to him, half back to winger, and he scored under the post from the 22. 4 guys hanging on to him. You know, that's all in the coaching, surely.
Because at that time, I was a young broadcaster in Palmerston North, and rugby just went professional. So I had a couple of mates who had a lot of spare time on their hands, like Christian Cullen, Preston Davis, Mark Ranby. So a few of us would play golf all day. Christian went on to be a very good All Black, as you'd be well aware of. He told me stories of those early days of professional rugby about just the sort of money that was going around, and they'd be on the team bus, they'd stop somewhere, and Jonah would buy like a stereo for the bus, and just the money. What was your experience when rugby first went professional of these young kids that had no sort of financial literacy coming into big sums of money? Being the wise old soul of the team.
Well, no, look, I think they took a while to shake down into professional athletes, and maybe it's gone too far now. You know, they still love the game. Like, those guys are brought up working, doing normal jobs, carpenters or electricians or lawyers or whatever, school teachers. So it took them a while to get their feet under the table in the professional sense. I remember Jonah, we played a pre-season game, super pre-season game in Greymouth, before we went to the Highlanders, the first game of the championship. And there was probably 6,000 people there. And after the game, there would have been 5,000 people around Jonah. Like, he was he was enormous in the game, but he just attracted people. I can't remember how they handled the money side of things, but they were a pleasure.
I've heard stories about him buying cars for young players, like later on in his career.
I think that's probably an exaggeration,
Right.
but I could be wrong.
Amazing. And then, so it was around this time, so you're part of this massive success in Auckland. All you, nothing to do with the players. And then, so is this about the time when the Wales thing comes along? So you get overlooked for an All Blacks job? What happens there? Are you sort of snubbed by the All Black?
I had applied for the All Blacks job. Hell, it's a long time ago. I think when Harvey got the job in '95, and thank God I missed it because I wasn't ready. But you think you are.
Why, with hindsight, why do you look back now and say you weren't ready?
Well, I hadn't, I'd been a school teacher. I hadn't been involved in the game. So, like a guy like Wayne Smith and Steve Hansen, they were in rugby academies and so on. So it's part when the game was amateur. So they grew up in the game, if you like. Smithy was CEO of Hawke's Bay Rugby. I was a school teacher and a school principal, so I wasn't involved in the game, apart from it was my passion, my hobby, coaching the game. Mm-hmm. And so, in '95, I was still a school principal. Mm.
Although, to be fair, it wasn't John Hart. It was like a side hustle for him as well, right? He had his job at
yeah, but he had coached Auckland in the middle '80s.
Okay, more paid his dues more, you mean?
Yeah. And so I wasn't ready. So I was, I thought I might get the job. And that was something you missed, which is thank God you'd missed that. I can't remember the question, Dom. What was the question?
Oh, so yeah, it was around this time that you left and went to Wales. So
I got an invitation to coach the Welsh. So I got a ring. Are you interested? Which, when you got a rugby nation which is as mad as the Welsh, it's their it's their national sport. They're passionate about it. There's a huge relationship between the Welsh and the New Zealand about rugby. A lot of respect. So I was pretty chuffed to get an invitation to go to Wales.
Absolutely.
So I was coaching the Blues and the Auckland at the time, and I thought, I better go down and have a chat to New Zealand Rugby about this because I really wanted to coach the All Blacks. As being a Kiwi, that's what you want to do. Mm. So I went down and saw David Moffat in Wellington. He was the CEO of New Zealand Rugby. He just abused me.
Did he actually?
I can't repeat what he said.
Yeah, it's a podcast. You can if you want.
No, I can't. It was...
Really, what was it really? Is this true?
Like, I couldn't believe what he said to me.
What, just really dismissive or just actually downright rude?
Both. He just swore at me and said, if you go to Wales, you'll never coach in this country again, with a few expletives. And I was shocked, which just gave me made me more determined to go. And then I did some homework, with a few board members, and they were lukewarm. So I thought, bugger it, I'll go. And I did discuss it a wee bit with Raewyn, of course.
Lesson learned from Christchurch.
And no, I was amazed. And they put this clause together called the Henry Clause. If you went overseas and coached international rugby, you wouldn't coach the All Blacks. You wouldn't coach in this country again, in fact.
Is that what it was called, the Henry Clause?
Yeah. And so I thought I'd burnt the bridges, quite frankly. And just to finish that story, when I came back, the 2003 Rugby World Cup was imminent. So I came back in 2002. And it was meant to be in New Zealand and Australia, 2003 Rugby World Cup. But because they couldn't get clean grounds, no advertising in New Zealand, the International Rugby Board, the IRB at that time, now in World Rugby, said, no, we can't have the World Cup in New Zealand, can't get clean grounds, will only be in Australia. So the board and the CEO got moved on.
All of them at the same time.
And the Henry Clause was lost.
Yeah.
And history's history.
You must have, do you send them all condolence cards at the time?
It was disappointing actually, because you'd given a lot of time to, and not because you didn't enjoy it, but I'd coached in Auckland Rugby I coached the under-20s for 4 years, the B team for a year, and probably 6 or 7 years with the A team, so probably 12 years of service.
It's a real slap in the face.
It's not, like it was a hell of an enjoyable for me, but the reaction to me going to Wales was really negative from New Zealand and Auckland Rugby.
Wow. Yeah, was it at the time? I remember, 'cause you did a press conference and then left the country straight away, right? Pretty much. Your car got towed. You did a press conference and your car got towed, so you had to get a taxi to the airport? Was it David Moffat that towed your car?
Oh, possibly. No, I was talking to Deeker, actually, Murray Deeker.
Yep.
I said, I'm going to Wales and I'm going tonight. It just happened. He was a mate at the time. And it was just a way of sort of ruling off. And I did have a car, obviously I parked it in the wrong place. So they had to find it, but I flew to Wales that night.
That's right, with Grant Dalton. He happened to be in the lounge and you guys ended up sitting next to each other on the plane.
I don't know if we sat next to each other on the plane, but we certainly had a conversation. Right. Yeah, it was really exciting to have a new challenge, but disappointing that after a lot of time in New Zealand rugby, that the administrators just cut me off.
And since there was that thing called the Henry Clause, like you must have, when you hopped on that plane, it must have been quite significant. Like you must have really thought that was it. You know what I mean? It's like the stream that you had, I suppose. The stream that you had in your drawer, along with, keeping your marriage good and raising happy, healthy kids. You could strike that off. That dream was over.
Yeah, to tell you that a wee bit further, Dom, I talked to the CEO of Auckland Rugby because I had a contract with them. I didn't have a contract with New Zealand, even though I was coaching Super Rugby with the Blues. I didn't agree with the contract, so I didn't sign it. But I had a contract with Auckland Rugby, which went on for another 18 months. And I talked to the CEO and he said, you've got a hell of a lot of service to Auckland Rugby, you'll be fine, Ted. Don't worry about it. And just before I left, I got a ring from the CEO. He said, look, we're in a board meeting. Can you come along to the board meeting? I said, oh, yeah. I thought, this doesn't sound too good. So I arrived at the board meeting. They said, look, we're happy for you to go to Wales, but you'll have to buy out of your contract. I said, how much is that? They said $300K.
Fuck.
And so I thought that was pretty bad at the time. And so some of my mates in rugby got together and put some pressure on it. It was reduced to 150. If I'd known they were going to do that when I signed the contract with Wales, they would have paid it. But I said, no, everything's okay. I'm sure Auckland Rugby will be fine. But I was mistaken. It was very disappointing at the time. So I paid that 150 over 3 years, 50,000 a year for 3 years.
It's a lot of money. You were earning good money though, right? Like £250 a year in Wales?
Oh, we bit more than that, Dom.
Was it more than that? And the exchange rate was terrible, so that's like three times that in New Zealand dollars.
Yeah, no, it was a good contract.
Yeah.
And
so you weren't too worried about the Auckland money.
Yeah,
it was just the principle.
But I really wanted to take another step in my coaching. So I'd coached provincial rugby and Super Rugby for 8 years, and I wanted to coach international rugby. I was 50, 52, 53. So I was maturing, I was getting on, and it was a magnificent experience. I look back and think, hell. And Raewyn went over and she coached a Welsh, coached a club side in Cardiff. And she's into netball, she's a very good netball coach, coached Auckland. And she was coaching this club team and they asked her to coach the Welsh team. So she was coaching Welsh netball and I was coaching Welsh rugby. So we were
power couple.
We were pretty busy at the time. Loved it. We were very, very, very involved in in Welsh community and the environment and all the people. Just love that experience. You go over and you know nobody, so it's a hell of a challenge. And the Welsh had some challenges with their results over the previous couple of years, so there was a big challenge on.
Yeah, because before you went over there, they played South Africa and lost by like 80 points or something, right?
96-3.
96-3.
Yes.
And then you must, and you signed by then, you must have been thinking, what am I walking into? 96-3. Jeez.
Funny enough, when all this was happening, and David Moffat said, if you go to Wales, you'll never coach in this country again, I arranged to meet the CEO of Welsh Rugby and the chairman in Sydney. And it was the weekend of the 96-3 or whatever it was. So it was probably a good time to be talking to them. And I signed the contract in Sydney. So I didn't go to Wales, because I didn't know if I was going to sign it till I saw all the detail. And I had a lawyer who I sent the contract to, emailed it. Do we have emails in 96?
No, it's probably like a telegram.
Anyway, 98 it was. Must have had emails. Anyway, I finished up signing the contract in Sydney. Yeah.
But a team that's just lost by 93 points, what makes you think you can add value and turn them around? Where do you begin? Is it because they're in such a crap place? You think the only way is up?
Yeah, you didn't think of that. They've got a history which was fantastic. Not always successful, but I remember watching the 1970 Lions play, and Carwyn James's team. And it was the nucleus of that team was Welsh. And a lot of those Welsh guys, like Barry John and Gareth Edward and JPR Williams and all those guys, I met when I was in Wales. Fantastic men. And they have had a history of some success. So there must be something in the blood there and in the country that. So it was just a bad game.
Bad game. And your results were immediate, like 11 wins in a row.
They weren't quite immediate, but
from an outsider's perspective, it seems like you.
No, it was 2 or 3 tests we went through before we started to win.
Right.
Yeah, we had a good run. We had a bit of luck. We had a good run. And the Millennium Stadium was being built, and we played South Africa to open the Millennium Stadium. And Wales had never beaten South Africa. We're talking 1998. Are we talking 98? Have I got that right? Yeah, I think so. An opening of the Millennium, might have been 99 actually. And we beat the South Africans, opened the Millennium Stadium. It was only half full for security reasons. So they half full, 3/4 full for the opening of the stadium for health and safety reasons. And I think we won 26 or 27-19. Brilliant. It's dreams are made of those things. Just fantastic. And we had some good wins. We beat France and Paris for the first time since 1976. We beat England at Wembley in a special game, 33-32, 32-31, something like that.
By the way, your recall is incredible.
Don't give me. Don't ask some difficult questions.
Don't do fact checking afterwards.
But there was a brilliant group of guys. We connected well, and I think being out of a non-Welsh person that helped, because it's very tribal. Wales is very tribal, east versus west, north versus south. So often, because it's tribal and you get a Welsh person selecting, they pick their own rather than the best.
Right, so you were neutral.
Sometimes. And I was neutral and managed to pick the best team. And I've just been to Europe, been to Wales, been to Cardiff for our anniversary of that England game against Wales versus England at Wembley in 1999. 18th of March, we had an anniversary of that game. 25 years.
Incredible.
And I've just been to the anniversary in Cardiff. Brilliant guys.
Yeah,
Great fun.
Are you still like a god over there?
That's a stupid question to ask me, John. Am I still like a god over there? No, I just love the people. They're very supportive.
Yeah.
They celebrate successes. They don't have a lot. And, there's a lot of unemployment in Wales, particularly in the valleys, and rugby to them is very important, and successes they celebrate. And they've got great memories of fantastic wins,
But yes, so this was around the time that you got the nickname the Great Redeemer. How was that at the time?
Ridiculous.
What, you don't have like if I was you, I'd have like probably a framed newspaper on my wall at home with that headline. Did it sit comfortably with you? It must have felt like the ultimate fuck you to David Moffat and the NZRU back home.
Yeah, I guess it was.
Or was there part of you that just makes you nervous because what goes up must come down?
No, you don't think of that.
No,
you're just trying to do your best, and I coached like I'd always coached, and how I've been coached. You coach from the front, you drive it, and then in the finish it takes its toll. After that series of successes, and let's be frank, we got to the '99 Rugby World Cup, and we get to the quarter-final, got beaten by the Australians. In the quarter-final, they went on to win the Rugby World Cup. They were good in those days, best in the world. So they won the 1990 World Cup, but they beat us in the quarter. I can't remember what the score was, 79 or something like that. And then I got asked to coach the British and Irish Lions. And the British and Irish Lions is a huge part of the game.
Yeah, England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales.
Oh, yeah. So it's a legendary rugby team, and it makes rugby go round. It's a big fillip for the South Africa, Australia and New Zealand when they tour, because it fills the coffers. But, Lions teams have been fantastic over the years, and be the first non-Brit, non-Irish person to be asked to coach the British and Irish Lions is big.
Yeah.
Even though I associate myself.
So it's just an opportunity. You just can't. It's too good to turn down.
And also, you wanted to stick it up New Zealand rugby and say, well, you can. You're not a bloody has-been, or you can do the job. But it took its toll. And when I was asked to do the job, obviously I had to discuss it with the Welsh Rugby Union, and they said, look, don't do this, Ted. Too much on your plate. And I thought I was bulletproof.
You were the great redeemer.
Yeah, I thought it was bulletproof, but it took its toll, and I hit the wall and got depression.
Yeah, actually, I've got a photo to show. There's that saying of a picture paints 1,000 words. Yeah. What do you feel when you see this?
Oh yeah. Well, that was the Lions tour. I've seen the photo. Thanks, Dom.
You don't even want to hold it. Where are we? What camera?
No. No, well, we had all the players on the Lions tour had contracts with media, with a newspaper, and those two, Dawson and Healy, weren't great team people at the time, and so Dawson had written some negative stuff before the first test about the Lions and my coaching, and which is the way it was, but it came out in the newspapers before the first test in Brisbane, a game that we happened to win very comfortably and play superbly, but it was just the way it was in those days. I'm sure players don't have media contracts today, but that's the way it was then. And so it was a pretty lonely tour. Like, I'm not blaming anybody.
No.
I was coaching with 3 or 4 English guys who were bloody good, and I enjoyed them, and I think we did a good job. It was a hell of a series, because the Australians were world champions from 99, and this is 2001. Finished up getting beaten 2-1, 7 tries each. I'm pumping up my own tyres here, Dom. But when I got back to Wales, I was just completely buggered. And I knew I had to get out. Otherwise, I was just going to die, if you know what I mean. And I had some good mates, David Pickering and his wife, Justine. He was the manager of the team, ex-Welsh captain. And Raewyn and I sat round a table and discussed it and decided that I would resign. I still had 18 months of the contract to go.
Yeah, do you think it was just the Lions thing that took it out of you, and doing the Lions thing, coaching Wales, and just the exhaustion of, you know, maybe having that split or division within the team, just everything, just a cumulative effect?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I thought I was bulletproof.
As you do, yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't. And I was told, don't do it. And ever since then, the Lions coaches had a year's leave of absence from their normal job. So Warren Gatlin, for example, who's coached the Lions a couple of times, who's a Welsh coach, he would have a year's leave of absence from Wales and just do the Lions. So they did learn a bit from that, which is nice.
Yeah.
That you were the guinea pig. But, you know, it's just accumulation that I just... Because I used to drive it from the front, which was wrong. I should have involved the other people a lot more, particularly the players, and that was the big learning. So from that adversity, you know, I look back on it and think, hell, if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't have done the same things with the All Blacks. You know, it changed the way I coached. It changed the way I thought about the players and the team and the rest of the management. So it was a massive learning experience.
So that
Difficult at the time,
yeah.
but no, I look back and think, yeah, good time. Difficult, but good learning.
Yeah, these things are difficult, but when you get through them and have some clarity at the other end, or see the light at the end of the tunnel, however you want to frame it, it works out for the best. But what did the depression look like for you? Because it's quite a, you know, because I went through some mental health stuff myself, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago in my mid-40s, and it's quite alarming when you go through life without any of this sort of stuff, and then suddenly it happens.
Oh, I just didn't want to connect with people. Head away, lie on my bed reading books.
Yeah, self-isolate.
Isolation. And I just couldn't get myself up to do you need to be pumped on your toes, on edge to do it right. Well, I did. Right? I could tell you some stories, Don, but I won't bore the public. But no, I knew that I had, health is everything. And I knew I had to get out of there. I had 18 months of my contract. I was being paid $1 million New Zealand dollars a year. So it wasn't giving away something that was not significant. I had to get out.
Did you? Yeah, you mentioned a guy before that you could talk to. Did you see any therapist or anything?
No.
But did you have like a team mental skills coach or anything in Wales that you could have spoken to, or was
no?
No, so just a couple of friends that you sort of did you mainly sort of bottle it up?
No,
or did you work it out internally yourself?
I just knew. I've been driving myself for a long time.
Yeah.
With Auckland and the Blues and the Welsh and the Lions, I just knew that I had to have some space. And I had no space.
Yeah.
And the only way I could get space was not do the job anymore. I still bloody passionate about rugby coaching. So I just made a decision to resign. And the Welsh Rugby Union were fantastic. They're very supportive.
Did people know something was up, or do you think you wore quite a good mask? I've had your old mate Sir John Kerwin on the podcast, and he talked about like wearing a mask and how he wore a better mask than.
I don't think I even thought about that.
Yeah.
You just know in your gut that it's time to move. So I coached 37 tests for Wales and 3 for the Lions, 40 tests. And, you know, I just knew that I needed some space to get myself right. And, you know, I'd burnt the bridges. So it was a hell of a big decision.
Oh, the burnt bridges as in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I feel like they sort of burnt the bridges, is that right? Like David Moffat and the New Zealand Rugby Union, they left you painted in a corner with no option.
No, well, they told me if I'd ever I coached overseas international rugby, I'd never coach in this country.
Right.
Country again. So I'd made the decision to go to Wales, and I knew that was the decision. So it was a hell of a big decision. But the team was much more important than me. And, I knew that I needed to get some space. Raewyn stayed because she was coaching the Welsh netball team to a World Cup in Jamaica. So she stayed. I came home. I went back to Christchurch. We had a house in Auckland.
No, actually, you're skipping out one bit, I think. She was coaching in Singapore, and you went to visit her, and she sent you off to your old groomsman who happened to live in Singapore because she was like, I'm busy. You just overlooked that bit.
God, you know a lot, Sam. You've done your homework. Now, when I was going through this depression, Rowan was in Singapore with the Welsh netball team in a pre-World Cup tournament. And I was sitting at home by myself. I thought, oh, bugger this. So I jumped on a plane from Heathrow, went to Singapore, walked into the hotel, said, "G'day, how you going?" I said, "Hell." And one of our mates lived in Singapore. He was a groomsman at our wedding, so I spent a bit of time with him. And then we went to Phuket, Thailand, and went to the beach for a week. Got my toes in the sand and relaxed, and went back from there to Wales, and still wasn't right.
Were you okay in Phuket? Because when I had John Hart on the podcast, he said the same sort of thing. Like after he fell into depression after the '99 World Cup, and his wife took him to dinner for a while. But there's that saying, wherever you go, there you are. So whatever's going, you can be on the nicest beach in the world, but...
No, so it didn't work.
Yeah.
But she was fantastic, as always. Came back to Wales, went through the process of getting out. And as I said, the Welsh Rugby Union was fantastic. And she stayed, and I went back to Christchurch, where my parents were, and I took them to Akaroa, and I ran the forest in Akaroa every day. And it's amazing the connection between the physical and the mental. And I started to come right. I started to relax and feel good. And then I got a phone call from Japan, from Waseda University. Would you come and coach us? So it gave me an opportunity to get back on the bike. And the Japanese only ask you when they're good. So I knew they'd be a good side. Because they wouldn't, they couldn't do that unless they had a great side. And I coached them with David Young, who happened to be the captain of the Welsh team when I was coaching, prop forward, and a very funny man, a good man. So we had, a long time, probably a couple of months in Japan, and they won the Japanese university title, as they were always going to do. And I trained every morning with David, coached every afternoon, so back on the bike, and started to feel bloody good again.
I just start to get your confidence back and get a bit of momentum.
Yeah.
What do you think? You'll close the chapter on this in a second, but biggest learnings about yourself in this time, and any silver linings from depression?
Oh, I think the big thing I learned, it wasn't about me, the coaching, it was about them, and I had to involve more the management and the senior players and the driving of the team. So I think that was the biggest learning curve. I couldn't drive it by myself. In fact, I was sitting with Clive Woodward after an England game, and we were on the same table, black tie dinner after a Six Nations game at Twickenham, and he's got 8 guys around him and I've got 3. And he said, "Ted, you don't think you 3 can beat us 8, do you?" And you look at what they're doing today, there's a large number of specialist coaches. Anyway, the biggest learning I had was, one, it was about them, not about me. And the more I could involve them and give them ownership and responsibility, the better I would be and the better they would be. And the second thing I learned is that I had to look after myself. And so I developed a personal game plan of self-preservation, if you like, or feeling good mentally, so mental health, physical health. So I did a lot of exercise. And as I said to you before, Dom, there's a huge connection between the mental and the physical. Having good mentors, So I started to talk to a lot of people, few people. John Graham was a good mate. You know, we'd gone through a lot together. He'd been very helpful over the years, and he was a hell of a good mentor. Spent time talking to him. Jock Hobbs, who was the chair of New Zealand Rugby. Chris Doig, who you probably heard of, who was a good mate of mine at school. We talked together at Auckland Grammar School. He was an opera singer. He came back from from Austria. We used to have long lunches and talk, challenge. He was fantastic. So a lot of good mentors. And just getting away, you know, I spent a lot of time up in Russell, up and over in Waiheke, just chilling, fishing, relaxing,
connecting with nature.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased that you found. I'm a massive fan of running. I'm so pleased that you found you know, your mental well-being again in the trails of Akaroa. That's cool.
Yeah, and it was like my parents in those days were in their 80s. Yeah, in their 80s, and so they were getting older. And I hadn't seen them for a while, so just spending some time with them. But you know that, as I said, I can't emphasise enough exercise and mental health. Massive correlation.
Yeah, and talking about things and showing vulnerability. It's not something you or I and our generations growing up were ever sort of...
No, and being able to, like Raewyn, John Graham, Jock Hobbs, those guys, you know, fantastic. Just to be able to... And then when I got involved in the All Blacks, Gilbert Anoka, who was a mental skills coach, we used to meet every night and discuss the day and how it went and how we could improve tomorrow, and you know, just sharing ideas, sharing your thoughts, sharing your vulnerability, making sure those guys were right and centre, making sure they were very much part of the future. You know, Wayne Smith, Steve Hansen, Gilbert Anoka, Mike Cron, and the All Blacks.
Yeah. Well, thanks for opening up about that stuff. Yeah, so we're at the part now where you become All Black coach. So the dream that you had for your entire life, you even outlived the Henry clause. So you get the job in 2003 after the World Cup, or 2004 after the World Cup? Who do you replace? Is it John Mitchell? No.
Yeah, it's John Mitchell. But I went to the Rugby World Cup where I meant to be coaching the Welsh. Steve Hansen took over. So I gave him the poison chalice, or so to speak. He took over the Welsh, but I was there as a tour leader of a group of supporters, Raewyn and I, and we watched the All Blacks play, and obviously they got beaten in a semi-final in Sydney, and you know, but what really happened was the 2003 Rugby World Cup was meant to be in Australia and New Zealand. Have I mentioned this already?
Yeah. About the signage in the stadium.
Yeah,
so it was in Australia. So the whole NZRU board got the axe.
Yeah, and the CEO, and Henry Claus was lost. So that was great. And then, you know, I got involved in Auckland Rugby again. I went from $1 million to $20,000. We would have a drop.
It's like going from being a breakfast radio broadcaster to a podcaster.
I don't know anything about that, but that's okay. And so and the Auckland and the Blues teams had a good time over that period of time when I came back, and won 3 championships in a row. And I applied for the All Blacks, and John Mitchell, who was a bloody good coach, and I were the only two who applied for the job, and I managed to get the job.
Well, yeah. Well, at that stage, if you lost a World Cup, you were done, weren't you?
Yeah, and usually at that stage.
Yeah, you only get one shot at it until you came. So you become coach, 2004. You had a good. When did Richie and Dan and those guys come along? When did you first come across those guys as coach? Was it around this time?
Yeah, well, Richie first played, I think, in 2001.
Oh yeah, so you inherited Richie, yeah.
And he was a kid then.
Yeah,
I think he probably 20 or 19 or 20. So he'd played quite a bit of All Black rugby. Dan started, he started the year before me. but he was a inside centre, second 5'8". Centre's mainly a second 5'8" in those days. Yeah, but it was good to have those men along. They were quite good.
They weren't bad, were they?
They were pretty helpful.
To be fair, they're helped along by a good coach.
They were pretty helpful. Yeah, but I think the big thing is that we had like minds. You know, I was lucky enough to get Wayne Smith and Steve Hansen to help, and Mike Cron, who was the forward coach, Graham Lowe, who was the conditioning coach, Gilbert, sports psychologist. So we had a good nucleus, and we were like-minded about team-driven culture rather than coach-driven culture. So,
yeah, where did that sort of thinking come from? You know, the whole leadership group and everything else.
well, that came from me.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily come from me because we were like-minded, but it came from the Welsh and Lions experience, knowing that it was not about me, it was about them. Still a wee bit about me, but a lot more about them. So it's like driving the bus from the back of the bus instead of the front of the bus.
Yeah.
And you're developing the people in front of you, giving them the right education and skills to take responsibility and ownership. And but that take a while to mould in, because you get the All Blacks in my time. You know, we met on a Sunday and you play your first test on the Saturday. We're playing England in Dunedin, just like Razor's doing this weekend. So that was 20 years ago. Same opposition. I'm going to Dunedin. Got to be there.
Yeah. Do you still enjoy going and watching the games?
Oh, hell yes.
Where will you be sitting? Who will you be with?
I'll be with the Alakadoos. I'll be with...
The other who?
So I'm going to hospitality. But it's just a parallel, you know. When I was a coach, the first test I was involved in was England in Dunedin. All right?
Yeah.
And Razor's first test is England in Dunedin. So it's only 20 years ago. So I just want to be there. And it's part of you. And I just hope
DNA.
I just hope it has a great start. So but in those days, you know, you didn't have any lead-in, so you meet on a Sunday, you play on the Saturday, and that goes on for quite a while. And we finish up in this first series of games in Johannesburg. And this is the end of the Tri-Nations, when we all won our home tests. Australia had won their home test, New Zealand won their home test, and South Africa had won their one home test. So we're playing South Africa in Johannesburg, and it's 2004, and it's the 10th anniversary of Freedom Day in South Africa. So apartheid was abolished in 1994, and it's massive. Ellis Park, Joburg. Every seat's got a drum on it and a scarf, and the drum has got Springbok colours and the scarf's Springbok's scarf. And Nelson Mandela walks out onto Ellis Park and congratulates the Springboks on their selection, wishes them well. And I'm sitting in the coach's box with Smithy and Steve, and I'm thinking, hell, this is out of the game. And Nelson Mandela, like, we play for the Freedom Cup, which is really about the change, you know, and you feel really, it's a really good thing to be involved in.
Yeah.
And but we get beaten. So we get finished last in the Tri-Nations on points for and against. And we go back to the team hotel and we have a court session, and it's not very good. It's pretty ugly. Court, you know what a court session is?
Yeah, like from old club rugby days, like a drinking session, games. And
that was part of the All Black culture.
Right.
Which I'm not criticising that. It was just
part of the time. Yeah.
Part of the tradition. And it doesn't finish up that well. It's pretty ugly.
What sort of things were happening in court sessions?
You don't need to know all that stuff. But, so we had a judge and a jury and compulsory drinking, and I'm thinking, hell, this is not good in the professional period. We need to be better than this. go back to New Zealand, call a meeting at head office, and discuss where we're at, and say, how do you enjoy playing with the All Blacks boys? Got 10 senior players. Oh, we feel very privileged. We feel very grateful, but we don't enjoy the culture, and we don't enjoy the expectation, which was a massive statement from the senior players, and that was gold. It was the catalyst for immediate change. And then we had the time, because we had 2 or 3 months before the NDU tour, and so we put in a leadership group, set a purpose, set up the culture, discussed it with the team. It became reasonably strong, solid, concrete. Always room for change, of course, but that was the start of the team-driven culture, really. And it proved very successful. We had some hiccups. 207.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Had some hiccups, but in the main, it gave players ownership and responsibility, and they were fantastic. And the more ownership and responsibility they got, the better they played.
Yeah, you mentioned with a wry smile just a second ago about the hiccups in 2007. Do you want to have a look at another photo?
Yeah.
You don't even want to touch that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Just about put that one in the fire. Yeah, how do you feel when you see it? Is it does it bring back any sort of emotion or feeling of that day?
Oh yeah, no, it was the hardest day of our lives, I think.
Yeah. So that was when you guys were knocked out of the 2007 World Cup with that just remarkable for numerous reasons game against France. In Richie's book, The Open Side, he said it was just like a moment that was captured by camera. Looks like he's crying, but he wasn't. He was just wiping away some sweat or something. Yeah.
No, that was at the press conference after the game.
Yeah.
And as you could imagine, there was, a couple of hundred people in the press conference. There's probably 20 television companies there. And it's like we were favourites to win. So we had a very successful run into the Rugby World Cup in 2007. We got a bit complacent, to be fair. We'd beaten the French by a big score not long before the Rugby World Cup in 2007. And so we got ahead of ourselves, and complacency is the biggest evil in business and sport, I guess. And we got complacent. It was a difficult game because the officiating in the game was not normally how we had experienced it. And so the boys found that difficult. And so they froze. Most of them choked. And we got beaten 20 points to 18. And at the end of the day, that was another huge learning curve. And it probably was a foundation to winning Rugby World Cup with a bit of luck in 2011 and 2015.
Well, there is that saying, you learn more from your fails than from any successes, right? But how did you manage to break history and you keep the job after that? Because as we mentioned before, with every single World Cup since the start of that tournament in 1987, you had one shot at it and then you were gone. You were out. Baby was out with the bathwater. So was it because you still had the support of the players? Like, how did you manage to keep the job and get a second crack at it?
I think, we'd had a hell of a good record. To be frank, we'd had a very good record in the previous 3 years. In fact, I'd say in 2005, 6 and 7, we probably won 90% of our tests. The players supported us. And I had Smithy and Steve and Cono and Gilbert, and they supported the management team. They're probably all better than me, but that's part of the deal, So the players wanted that management team to continue, including the coaches, and I think that was probably a big thing. The game itself, the quarter final, we get beaten. There was, although I'm not making excuses, but there was the refereeing in that game was questionable. Let's not go any further because people get very sensitive about these things. So there was a few grey areas there. I was amazed that we were reappointed, to be frank. I went to Wellington with Raewyn, went through the interview, did an interview well. We went out that night, which we usually do, and had a couple of wines and a nice meal, and said, well, were we looking for something else to do?
Back to Japan, maybe? Or
Oh, well, yeah. And I got you, when Jock Hobbs said you've been reappointed, the next morning I went to the New Zealand Rugby and you couldn't knock me over with a feather. But again, from that adversity you learn, and we learned a lot. We got ahead of ourselves. We got complacent. The unexpected happened in that game. We learnt from the unexpected. We had a policy for 211 Rugby World Cup. The unexpected will happen. Handle it. And funnily enough, we had some unexpecteds in 211, and we had Kerry Evans come in and help us. So Gilbert got Kerry Evans to help us, and Kerry Evans was a psychiatrist, an ex-New Zealand football captain, and a black belt in karate. And he talked about, he worked with us on the mental strength side of the team, and those two things made a massive difference to us, and helped us win in 211. Smashed the French 8-7.
1 point, one huge point. That tournament, I can't imagine what that tournament was like for you, because it just felt like everything was falling apart. I remember at the beginning of the tournament, there was shots of like Aaron Cruden in the grandstand drinking beer in Wellington, not even in the frame. Stephen Donald was out whitebaiting. Dan went out injured. Richie had a broken foot. There was incidents with like Zach and Corey Jane and who else was it? Izzy? From a coach's perspective and a former headmaster, you must have been like, what the hell is going on around me?
No, well, the unexpected, we had Richie with a broken metatarsal in his foot, and Deb Robinson, the doctor, and the medical staff are fantastic. He didn't train for a month. Unexpected it happened, handle it. And Richie and I didn't discuss his foot, because we'd have to make a decision. So
What do you mean you didn't discuss his foot?
we didn't discuss his foot. We didn't talk about Richie's foot between the two of us. Left it to the medical staff. They said he was okay. He didn't train, played. Then we had all these injuries to the playmaker, to the 5'8" position. So Dan rips the adductor tendon off the bone, and in the practice before the Canadian round robin game, the last round robin game, he's going to captain the side for the first time. That was massive, and he's out of the tournament. And I remember going into the dressing shed after he'd done that and said, look, fellas, the unexpected has happened. We've planned for this. Dan's out of the tournament. Colin Slade will be superb. We'll go up 5% and play for Dan. And then Aaron Cruden came in, right? So he wasn't in the team.
No, he was drinking beers at a pool match in Wellington.
Well, I don't want to know that. I might have to walk out of this interview now. I don't want to know what Aaron Cruden was doing out of the All Blacks. It's immaterial. So he came in. And he was just a kid, still in nappies, really. 19-year-old guy in a Rugby World Cup as the playmaker in the caller of the shots. Very talented, Aaron. Very talented player, good athlete, but young. And then Colin Slade gets injured in the first quarterfinal against the Argentinians. He's out of the tournament. Need to find Beaver, need to find Steve Donald. Can't find him. Rang a young lady who knew him well, now his wife. Said, where's Beaver? He's whitebaiting Ted. I'll get him to ring you. Beaver rings me. What are you doing? Whitebaiting. How much you got? 8 kilos. 8 pounds. Let's be correct. If you bring that to the Heritage Hotel in Auckland, Beaver, you can play in the final of the Rugby World Cup. About 3 hours later, knock on the door. Beaver comes in with a chili bin. Perry Whippy grabs it, cooks a whitebait meal for the team, and the rest is history.
I've heard you.
So Aaron Cruden gets injured in the final. So we beat the Australians and played well in the semi. Aaron Cruden gets injured in the final. Beaver comes on, wins the game for us. He went through hell, Steve Donald.
Yeah.
From people and the media, because he had a poor game against Australia in Hong Kong. Cost us the game, perhaps. I love him. Fantastic guy. Bright, knows the game. Comes in on the final. Boys walk towards him, embrace him, love him, because he's a great team guy. And he wins the game for us. Kicks the winning goal, plays out of his skin. Now he's written a book, had a movie made of him. He'll probably be the next Prime Minister, I'd say.
Yeah, how do you reflect on that? Because it's like, just like one point in it, lucky kick or whatever, or lucky opportunity for Stephen Donald to have the chance to redeem himself. But if he missed that kick, he'd still be, not respected by the New Zealand public, as you would be as well. It seems almost quite cynical in a way, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean?
He didn't miss it.
Yeah.
He picked it.
No, I suppose I'm thinking it had things been different.
Well, there's a very fine line, isn't there?
Yeah.
I've got to go, mate.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. I think we're just about done, haven't we?
Okay, just about done, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, oh no, that's all right. So, I just found you captivating. I could have talked for ages. In the back of your book, you say the Rugby World Cup is the holy grail. That's what gives you peace. Has it given you peace?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Like the feeling after the final, walking onto Eden Park, you just feel at peace. And it's probably the first time in 8 years you feel an absolute peace, because you always know there's another game and another game. So I was lucky enough to coach the All Blacks for 103 tests. And I'd made up my mind I was 66, young. I was
You had the pension coming in, you didn't need a job.
No, but I felt young, and I still feel young-ish. And it was time to move, and I was so grateful for that opportunity. But it was amazing how you feel. And then Raewyn walked onto the field, and you just saw the relief in her face.
Actually, this might be a photo you're prepared to hold.
Yeah, that's the photo.
Yeah.
The relief in her face. I get emotional looking at that.
Oh.
Because, you're married to this wonderful lady who had got no control, really. And we wondered if we could live in this country if we got beaten in 2-11. And we love New Zealand. And it's our country. And I can see what Harvey was talking about. There's a huge amount of scrutiny, and I could tell you stories for hours about the scrutiny and people hiding around your house and hiding behind the hedge, trying to get, Anyway, let's not go there. And so there's a huge amount of relief. And it's all part and parcel of the job, I guess.
Shouldn't be, though, should it? To a degree, it should. But.
Well, some of those things shouldn't happen. But when you're All Black coach that you're going to go through some examination and some scrutiny. But, you wouldn't change it for quids.
Well, it's been a hell of a career. And one last photo, this one. They say, there's that saying behind every great man is a great woman.
Yeah, I don't know where that's been taken.
But, geez, you've married well, eh? You've done good.
I have.
What would she say about your greatest strengths, greatest flaws?
Oh, she'd probably go on about my flaws for hours, but no, I think we were very lucky. I'm very lucky because she's been so supportive, and you couldn't have done it otherwise. You go through some real challenges, and we mentioned the depression after the Lions tour. Hell, I've got so much respect and gratitude And now it's 54 years.
It's incredible. And I see you guys around. You're holding hands, you're drinking wine, you're laughing. It's I mean, it's inspirational. Like in terms of a partnership, it's couple goals.
I remember before the 2-11 final, I went home on the Saturday night. It was a Sunday game.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm right. And I couldn't do nothing in the pub. We were just sitting there festering, waiting for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And we were living in St Heliers, and we walked around the waterfront, because I always walk before the game. It relaxes me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's meant to relax me. So you're just doing exercise, make you feel good, pass some time. And walking past people, and they're looking at me thinking, what's he doing out here? Why isn't he with the All Blacks? And, we walked for 3.5 hours before a game in Wellington once. It's just what you did, we have a chat and catch up, because you're away all week.
Mm.
You might have been away for weeks, and just nice to be able to chat and talk to your mate, about other things rather than rugby. Take your mind off it for a while. No, I can't speak highly enough.
She is your mate. She's your best mate, eh?
Correct.
Yeah. Hey, Ted, Sir Graham Henry, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And, just thanks. Thanks for everything you've done for New Zealand rugby, and just thanks for being just a good man.
I feel very fortunate that I had that opportunity. Thank you.